Hello YouTube, thank you for tuning in to the CyberRancher channel. You probably don't realize this, but ranchers are plant lovers too, and I'm no different. In fact, I have my own plant herbarium. And if you don't know what an herbarium is, it's basically a museum collection of dried plants. And these are my plants that I've collected and identified and put labels on. I have about 500 species I've collected over 3 different continents, but mostly my collections all come from Idaho or the Pacific Northwest, large part. And this video, I'm going to discuss Idaho's rare plants, at least some of the rare plants that occur in eastern Idaho. And I got inspired to do this video because in 2019 I took a job for the Seed Success Program for the Chicago Botanic Garden, and I led a team of 3 out in collecting wildland seeds on Bureau of Land Management land in eastern Idaho, or the Upper Snake River District of the Bureau of Land Management. And we also collected some other plants as well, some that are important for pollinator habitat, but for a large part we were out there trying to collect these rare plant seeds. And the purpose of that program is to put these seeds into long-term storage to preserve their genotype for future generations, or to preserve it in case these populations get knocked out from some kind of human activity and they need to be reestablished. And so it's kind of a project to help keep these plants with us. And so that was the work I was doing. And before I get into this video, I want to show a little bit about some of the tools that botanists use and how they go about their work. And then I'm going to get into the rare plants. So stay tuned and enjoy the video. Okay, so the first plant I want to talk about is Limus salinus, subspecies Salomonas. And this plant here is one we collected. It's not on the Idaho rare plant list, which is maintained by the Idaho Native Plant Society, but it's one that is it's globally restricted, I guess, or it's an endemic. Mostly to Idaho. It might creep into Montana, but mostly Idaho. And I have my own personal rare plant list, and I consider it a rare plant in my own personal way. But most of the plants I'm going to talk about on this video, they're on the Idaho Native Plant Society's rare plant list, but a number of them are not, but they are on my list. But no one follows my list. But anyway, so when a botanist goes out and collects these plants, typically what they do is they'll document where it was collected at with like a written description. They'll get information on its coordinates, like a latitude and longitude, using a GPS, its elevation, and they'll document like associated species to describe its habitat, and also a written description of the habitat. It includes information like who collected it and who identified it, the collection number, and the date it was collected. And you also, on labels, you also identify what herbarium this specimen comes from. And so this is my personal herbarium, Tabiwa herbarium, and the family name, Poaceae, and the scientific name here, and the common name. On my collections, because I'm a Shoshone-Bannock tribal member from the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, I also put down the Bannock and Shoshone name if I know it. And so this one here is called Dogwa Buhip, rattlesnake's grass, or Dogwa Sonip, rattlesnake's grass in Shoshone. So these are my collections. And usually what you do is when you collect it in the field, you bring it back and you'll identify it with like a dissecting scope. And then you'll use these dichotomous keys. And like here's, you get into the grasses. Here's Limus right there. We turned right to it. and then you identify it with these keys. And a lot of people, nowadays they're using artificial intelligence to identify these plants, but I don't think it'll work too great on these rare plants, because sometimes you come across plants that they didn't read the books, or there's not that much information out there about them, or they're a completely new species. And so, like traditional classic botanists, what they do is they'll typically be knowledgeable of these plants, and they'll see something out in the field and they'll be like, whoa, that's different. It's different than the other plants I've seen, or the plants in that same genus. And then they'll take it back and they'll key it out in all their books and references, and if they can't identify it, it could very well be a new species. And so classic botanists, they still use these books. They're starting to get into, well, they've been doing a lot of genetics, molecular biology with the plant species, and redefining what is a species and what species go into which classification or categorization. But anyway, that's what I do. I would consider myself a classic botanist. I'm going to show you this website. This is the Consortium of Pacific Northwest Herbaria, and it's a good database to search where collections of plant species have been made. It's a good tool. Now, a lot of the rare plants that are on this video, you won't be able to find the specific location because they protect those specific sites. They don't want people going out and collecting them or taking their seeds and disturbing their populations. But this grass I'm going to show you, which I consider rare, is can be found on here. And so people way above me, they make the determination on what's rare and what's not rare, and what's protected, what's not protected. But this one's on there, and for whatever reason, they're not going by my list like I would want them to, but they got their way of doing it. But anyway, these are where collections have been made of this plant, salmon wild rye. And you can see it mostly occurs up there around by Chalice, into Clayton area, and then also here in the Arco foothills, and looks like the tip of the Lemhi Mountains. And if you look at these collections, and this is one that I actually made, is right here. And see, it'll give you if you click on it, it'll give you the photograph, and you could zoom in on it. It's really nice. And see, this is a label I made for this particular plant collection. And this is at Boise State University. So when we made these collections for Seeds of Success, we sent one to Boise State, and one to Smithsonian, and one to the Idaho Falls BLM office. And so I just wanted to show that tool. So this is the plant when we collected it in the field, and you're probably asking, why was I up there doing this? And at that time, I took a job as team lead for the Chicago Botanic Garden Seeds of Success program, and it was a contract that was funded by the Bureau of Land Management. And the BLM, they've been running the Seed Success program for quite a few years. They were doing it back when I was a botanist there, and I ran the Seed Success program when I was a BLM botanist in like the early 2000s for about 4 years, and we made a lot of collections of a lot of different species. And at this point in time, they were looking to get species of Idaho's endemics, which means they're rare plants. And so Limus salinus subspecies Salomonas, or salmon wild rye, it's considered an endemic species, and I consider it rare. It only grows in central Idaho, and it's pretty it's unusual plant for me, but I don't think it's on the Idaho rare plant list or anything like that. But this is a photograph of it on the tailgate of our truck. That's my boot there. And we'd go out and collect these plants. We'd find them while they're you could make a good plant collection of them when the florets are there, it's identifiable, and we'd get the root and everything. That's what you want to do when you get the collection, and then we press it. and make a voucher specimen. That's what it's called. And then we judge how far along the seeds were for harvest. And so when we'd go there, we'd write in a paper, probably be about 2 weeks before we collect this seed. And then we'd come back and get the seed. And so here's another picture of it, I think growing in Spar Canyon, and growing in on this calcareous gravelly soil. Here's a photograph of its leaves. That's one of the characteristics that I've noticed on it, is it has this really soft pubescence on the leaves when you look closely. This is a picture of its florets. And here's a picture of another picture of it on a rock. And that was what we were hunting, were the seeds. So when we went back and harvested the seeds, this is a photograph of what they look like. Now here's the habitat where we made the collection in the Arco foothills, and it likes this. At that point, it liked these high windswept ridges, and it's associated with low sagebrush, Artemisia arbuscula. And if you look over here, there's a little bit of a Claria cristata, and probably an Antenaria or Epilobium there. It's hard to tell, but or not Epilobium, but Eriogonum. Might be Eriogonum cespitosum, but I think it's an Antenaria. It's hard to say, but this is the habitat where we collected it at, and but we also found it in Spar Canyon, growing with Wyoming big sagebrush as well. So now I'm going to show you some of Idaho's rare plant species. And the first one I'm going to show you here is called Antenaria arcuata. I think the common name of this plant is arcing pussy toes. I think that's the name of it. And we collected the voucher specimen on August 21, 2019, and it likes to grow in alkali meadows with hummocks. And so if you look at this habitat photograph here, there's some hummocking, especially on the edges of where this clay, this alkali clay soil type, in the wintertime it freezes and it forms these hummocks. And so it likes to grow in that kind of habitat. And this species here is a Potentilla cinquifolia, I think it is. Or no, I'm sorry, it's a Diaspora fruticulosa. That's this shrub type here. But the other associated species are Baltic wiregrass, Agrostis stolonifera, Antenaria parviflora, Potentilla gracilis, Elymus glaucus, Symphotrichum lanceolatum, Ranunculus gormanii, Juncus bulfonus, Carex periana, Poa secunda, and Solidago nana. Those are some associated plant species that it likes to grow with. And this area gets grazed pretty heavily. And this is a picture of it, a close-up picture of the species. And some of the identifying characteristics of this plant is that it has white tomatose pubescence, it's woolly, and it has these arcing stolons, making this plant distinct. It's a very beautiful little plant, and these are the seeds that we were collecting. Here's a better picture of it. And you can see how these stolons, they arc. And it gets, see, here's the hummocks, and then here's the cows out there, and the cows are in the plant habitat. This area is in the Little Lost River Valley. And here's another picture of it, arcing pussy toes. Another picture of its seeds. So we'd have to get a a count of how many seeds by weight, so we could estimate how many seeds we collected, and we'd also have to try and figure out how many of these seeds are viable seeds, because not all these seeds are viable. And so we'd have to look at them with the microscope and do cut tests and things like that. And this is me using my reloading equipment to weigh the seed and estimate how many species we have, or how many seeds we have. But that's arcing pussy toe. The next plant I'm going to show you is called Astragalus amicii. And this is, the common name of this plant is Lost River milk vetch. It grows high in the mountains of the Lost River range, and I think it's over in the Lemhis, and it might be over there on in the what are those mountains called over there by Copper Basin? It's a mountain range in between Copper Basin and the Lost River range. I can't remember the name of those mountains, but it grows in those mountains high up in the rocks. And this is a picture of where it grows. You could find it like underneath the overhangs and cliffs in this limestone gravel. It's an endemic species, very rare, but pretty well protected growing up high in the mountains like that. This is kind of a picture of its habitat. You could probably find it growing in certain spots on these cliffs if you were to rappel down, but typically you'll find it in kind of like this kind of habitat over here with mountain mahogany. This is a canyon where we were looking at while we were up on the ridge. Erin was down here, and she went down this area and was looking. I was up high, and this is a cool cave I found up there I want to go back to. But this is a typical habitat shot. Sometimes you'll find it growing like one or two here. We didn't collect this species because we could never find a population big enough to get seed from. There were just never enough plants. This is more habitat photographs. And this is the fruit of the Astragalus, which are, when you identify Astragalus, there's hundreds of Astragalus species. And so the fruit characteristics and the shape of it is diagnostic on how to tell what species it is. Here's a photograph of the flower itself, what the seeds look like. Okay, the next species is called Lemhi milk vetch, and this is Astragalus aquilonius, and it's a interesting plant that likes to grow in shale and gravel banks and can pretty much only be found in Custer, Lemhi counties, Idaho. And let's look at some of these pictures. Some of the distinctive characteristics of it are these pods in its habitat. Very few plants could grow where this plant could thrive. So this is its habitat. You'll find it in this kind of soil type, at the bottom of these kind of hills. Loose soil. You'll find it in this area, up on this stuff. There's another picture of the plant itself. It's a beautiful plant. And so associated species are Encelianopsis nudicale is one. Let's see, I think some Phacelia. I can't remember what species of Phacelia it was. And looks like some probably some shadskill maybe, or Atriplex. It's probably Atriplex. But yeah, that's that species. The next species, and this is one that we actually did collect, is called starveling milk vetch. Astragalus jejunus, variety jejunus, and it likes to grow on these volcanic ash soils. That's where you could find it, somewhat barren hill sites with blue bunch wheatgrass, Tetrademia canescens, gravelly soil. And let's look at some pictures of it here. There's some more habitat of it. Growing with, I believe this is probably Stenotus acaulis. It's in the Asteraceae family, and it looks like there's even some serviceberry growing up here, probably Utah serviceberry. Some of the other associated species include, like I said, Agrippinus piccatum and Phlox hoodii, Linium lewisii, Oenothera cespitosa, Tetrademia canescens, Cymopterus ibopensis, Penstemon humulus, Cryptanthus sericea, and like I said, Amelanchier ulnifolia, the serviceberry. So this is a really good picture of it, of the plant, and some of the characteristics of it are is it has these leaves they're linear, narrowly elliptic, and the pods are bladderly inflated and mottled, so it's pretty distinct. It's a beautiful little flower. Here's a picture of the seeds, and here's a picture of it just in flower. And give it with my compass to give it some scale. There's a picture of Aaron taking pictures of it, or pointing it out on where its habitat is. Here it is growing up on a ridge. Here's some little later in the season when we were harvesting the seeds. And better close-up picture of what the seeds look like. So you can look at even the seeds are mottled, kind of like the pods. And let's see, what else could I say about this species? This is probably one of the first species I learned about when I was working for BLM, monitoring it. I established some photo point monitoring for this plant species, but I really like this one. It grows way over there in extreme eastern Idaho, Bear Lake County. On a lot of the populations you can find are in the Bear Lake Plateau, so that's east of Bear Lake on that plateau out there. And it grows kind of north up into the forest too. So that's about the only place it grows at in Idaho. This is a Astragalus jejunus with Zephyra and Aaron digging the root out, and the root, you could just keep digging and digging. That root goes way deep, and so we're trying to make a good collection of this plant as it goes deep down into the soil. But you can see the little plants here growing, different ones. So you gotta be careful when you get the roots of these Astragalus, because they usually got deep roots.
Are you one of those people who hate cows? Just despise the animals? Well, what better way to show your hate for cows than to own a Scottish Highland cowhide? You could show your friends how you removed one from the earth. And look at this hide. It's a winter hide, professionally done. Look at that. Wow. You could hang that on your wall, throw it on your couch, or maybe you're one of those people who always have wanted to be a Viking. You could cut a hole in the middle of it, throw it over, put a belt on with a sword, and you could be a Viking. Or maybe you want to maybe you're like the Predator and you want to have a trophy hanging on your wall, or show that you removed a cow from the earth before it polluted and caused climate change. Well, I have it here for you. I'll sell this baby right here for $1,500. And you could have this hide for $3,000. So, what you waiting for? Give me a call.
So here we have another Astragalus. We were hoping to get a collection of this one, but when we went and returned back to the spot to get it, it had very few seeds. The seeds dropped very quickly. This is Astragalus spatulatus Draba milkvetch. And the places I've seen it in Idaho are extreme southeastern Idaho, again on the Bear Lake Plateau on Boundary Ridge, basically the ridge that separates Wyoming from Idaho. But I've also found it on Mount Putnam, the top of Mount Putnam, and I think South Putnam. But it's a beautiful little flower as well. and it likes windswept ridges, hilltops, bluffs, outcrops, and barren places in the foothills and canyons. Here's a good picture of it. And you could even find it in this red soil, oxidized soil, growing here with Phlox longifolia, and probably blue bunch here. It grows very low to the ground. I like where I find it. It's on these real windswept ridges, in kind of what I call cushion plant communities. And see, like these are like little cushions. That's what I call that kind of plant community, windswept ridge cushion plant communities. Another thing I wanted to say about this is I don't believe this plant is on the Idaho rare plant list, but like I said, I have my own version of plants that I considered rare, and this is one that I think is rare, but I think it might have been on the Idaho rare plant list, but maybe it's not now. But you don't find it, it's not very widespread. The next plant is Carex idahoa, and I'm not sure if this is on the rare plant list. I was talking to a botanist from Montana, and he says this plant is all over the place, but I don't see this plant very regularly. I've only seen it in the wild once, and there are collections of it around Idaho, but I've been to some of those collection sites. I can't seem to find it. When I do find it, there's like one plant, and you can't, and no others. It's a hard one for me to find anyway. Maybe I don't got the Carex idahoa eyes, but it likes kind of limey, seasonally moist meadows and springs. And I found this one up along the Blackfoot River during the Seed Success project, and we never found enough of it to collect the seed, but we did find one species of it, one plant here, and here's what its fruits look like. That's called a periginium. And sadly, I don't got any photographs of the actual habitat. I don't know what I did with them, but it's a pretty cool carex. Wish I could find more of it. The next plant is in the borage family, and it's Cryptantha cespitosa. And this plant species, it likes to grow on these hilltops, these windswept ridge, barren hilltops, shallow soil, usually dominated by blue bunch wheatgrass and black sagebrush. That's what this here is, black sage, Artemisia nova. And this is a photograph of it. It's distinguished from another common species called Cryptantha humulus, mainly by its height. On average, it's less than 10 centimeters, so it's a little short guy. And these are the nutlets of the Cryptantha cespitosa. And you see how small it is. It's only 3 centimeters high. It's just a little teeny Cryptantha. And I found it over in Bear Lake County, extreme southeastern Idaho, but also found it over there in the Deep Creek Mountains, and this is some habitat for it. And we actually made a collection of this for the Seed Success program. And there's it in seed. There's some more nutlets of this plant, and it's a rare species for Idaho, on the rare plant list, I believe. The next plant is called Draba hitchcockii, Hitchcock's draba, and it grows over there. It's associate of it could be that salmon wild rye, but it grows over in that same kind of country in the Arco foothills. It's a rare plant species, endemic to that area, on the rare plant list. And the key characteristics of it are is that the style at least 1 millimeter long, and it's got leaves that are have ciliate hairs on the margins, and the bottom surface with stalked hairs. And you can't tell with this photograph, but you can see the hairs of the leaves on this photograph. And it likes to grow with here's some seeds. It likes to go with, this is a Penstemon eriantherus, but it will also grow with blue bunch wheatgrass, black sagebrush, mountain mahogany, cheatgrass, Stenotissacalis are some of its associates. And we did get this species for the Seed Success Program, so you'll find it on these outcrops up here, and you even got some Utah juniper in there. This is a plant that, again, I consider rare, but I think it used to be on the Idaho rare plant list, but it's no longer on there. But you don't see it much. I mainly only have seen it in central Idaho, east central Idaho, in Coleonopsis nudicale. It's a really cool plant, and I think it has medicinal values. It smells like it. If you smell the root of it, it smells very medicine-y. And it likes to grow with, one species it grows with is Astragalus aquilonius. It'll grow with other rare plants like Hymenopappus. Oh, you can't see this picture very good, but that's it growing there. And it's got this crazy root. Like, see this plant? It's like the root's huge, and it smells very medicine-y. It's my favorite plant. The next plant is called Hymenopsis cooperi, variety canescens, and we did collect this species for the Seed Success Program in 2019. I have a little bit of history with this plant. I was the one who discovered it in Idaho when I worked for the BLM, and it could be found on also on windswept ridges, shallow rocky soil, and limestone soil, and it's associated with Cryptantha cespitosa. One thing that one of my friends told me, Roger Rosentreter, is that rare plants like rare plants, and they hang out together. And so a lot of times when you find one rare plant, look around, you might find another. And so Cryptantha cespitosa, that's it here. Or it's grows here. That might be some right there, but this is the Hymenopsis cooperi here. It's in the Asteraceae family, and it grows with, it's associated with Stenotissacalis. That's what this little Asteraceae is here, or sunflower family. Poa secunda, excuse me, Cymopteris ibopensis, Phlox hoodii, Tetrademia canescens, that's what this is here. Astragalus pershii, that's probably this little plant right here. Erigeron pumilus, Chrysothamnus viscidiflorus, that's green rabbit brush, and Chinactis douglasii. Here's a picture of it up close. Cooper's rubberweed. I drew this picture years ago. Here's another picture of it. And there's one with the plant press. Kind of give you some scale. And there's one, something rooted it out. I don't know what happened to that one. The next plant that we're going to talk about here is called St. Anthony Evening Primrose, Oenothera cymophila. And we did collect this plant for the Seed Success Program, and now it's preserved species. It's one of my favorite rare plants of eastern Idaho. I have a little bit of a story with this one. When I worked with the BLM, I was in charge of monitoring this plant, and I had to prepare like a report on the rare plants for eastern Idaho for BLM, because this grows in the St. Anthony sand dunes on BLM land, and I think some state land up there. But I put in there some of my monitoring work, and at that time I noticed some of these plants being just disturbed by off-highway vehicles. If you know, like the St. Anthony sand dunes, there's a lot of off-highway vehicle use out there, and there was plants being used as like jumps, and they were tearing it up. And so I put in there I was going to recommend that its status be elevated because it was being threatened by off-highway vehicles. And when I did that, I submitted it to my manager. The manager said didn't say anything, and I had a date when he was supposed to return my my information and give me comments on it, and he never did. So I submitted it and discussed it at the Rare Plant Conservation, and they moved it up in status. And after that happened, I got in trouble by the BLM because this plant was at one time a candidate species for listing on the Endangered Species Act, and he was mad because I presented that and had that information, photographs and stuff, and I was like, well, you had time to comment, but you never commented. And that was kind of the end of that. But anyway, like I said, this plant grows out in the sand dunes, and it grows with another Limus flavus, yellow wild rye. That's its associate. Also Ceralidium lanceolatum. It's a that's this little I think that's this plant right here. It's a Fabaceae legume family. I can't remember what the common name of it is, but and also Acronathrum hymeneoides, Indian rice grass. It likes to grow with that. Enothera pallida. I seen like this. See this other one here? That's another Enothera, a different species. Enothera pallida, and also gray rabbit brush and Spirabolus cryptandrus. So it doesn't grow with very many species, but it's a really cool plant, and it likes to occupy these areas that are protected by a lot of place times, or a lot of cases. It's kind of protected here. The off-highway vehicle guys don't like to ride in this stuff. They'd rather ride in the sand dunes. But these dunes, they move, and as they move and stuff, these rocks get exposed, and then that plant will drop its seed there and grow. And here's that Ceralidium lanceolatum here. It's scuff pea, I think it is. Scuff pea. Its habitat, very sandy soils, and could get really big. Some of these photographs are really nice, like this. You can see the Grand Teton back there. But that's that plant. The next species is another Fabaceae or legume family plant, Oxytropis besseyi, variety salmonensis, and this is also another endemic to east central Idaho. It likes to grow on fragile soils, and it's usually associated with Encelianopsis nudicali, Indian ricegrass, even Halogeton glomeratus, Penstemon natitis, Hypomopsis congesta, Hymenopapsis filifolius, blue bunch wheatgrass, cheatgrass, Pteryxia petraea, that's a Apiaceae family, Artemisia tridentata, subspecies tridentata. So it likes deep, well-drained soils, or it can, if it grows with that. And this is a picture of it here, and it likes to grow on these soil inclusions. And if you see these kind of soil inclusions when you're out and about, that's a place to go look for plants to speciate, or rare plant species. And this is up in the East Fork Salmon River country. Here's another picture of it. And there's the seeds. It could also grow in this kind of a volcanic ash soil as well. This is another rare plant species. This one's extremely rare. I think there's only a couple occurrences known in Idaho, maybe in Montana, but it grows up there in I think it's Clark County, and it likes to grow on travertine soils and outcrops. It's called Paronychia sessifolia nailwort, and it's in the Caryophyllaceae family, or the pink family. And it grows like, these are old, I think possibly hot springs, travertine soils, and that's where you'll find it. This is what it looks like. It kind of looks like a moss, and it's in full flower here. You can see its flowers here. And it's grown with the Hymenopapus here. Some of the other associates are Gutierrezia cerotherae, Ericomeria nova, Fraseria albicollis, Phlox hoodii, Stenotusicallis, Poa secunda, Erigeron tweedii, Pacera cana, Eriogonum microthecum, blue bunch wheatgrass, and Indian rice grass. And this one was hard to collect because basically one flower has a seed, and that's Aaron pressing the plant. These are individual plants here growing. And I remember when we did the study on how many seeds per flower, you know, you have to test to see if the seeds are viable. We had like 0.68 seeds per fruit. And so it took us a long time to collect enough seed for this project. You had to collect, I think, over 2,000 seeds to, or greater than 10,000 seeds to make a viable collection for the Seed Success Program. And it took us a long time to get the seed for this one, but we were able to get it. That's a close-up picture of the seed. And there's its flowers. The next species here is Primula alcalina. It's in the primrose family or Primulaceae family, and it grows in the Little Lost and Birch Creek area of east central Idaho. Might even grow over into Montana, but it's a globally rare species, and it likes wetland areas with frost heaves. And so here you could find it along this creek here. And the associated species that typically find it with, here's some here that Sephra's looking at growing right along the edge, and there's some seeds, but it's a very beautiful little flower, but it grows with Muhlenbergia Richardsonus, Agrostis stolonifera, Juncus balticus, Valerian edulis, which is a edible plant, Parnassia parviflora, Pacera debilis, Poa pratensis, Elma species. That was a thing. I found this grass up there that I still don't know what kind of grass it is, but Anticelia elegans, Symphotrichum hesperium, Potentilla gracilis, Polonium occidentale, and Diaspora fruticulosa. And these are the seeds, very tiny seeds. I think these are clusters of 10. That's that plant. Next species I'm going to talk about is one that wasn't part of the Seed Success Program, but it's a rare plant species that occurs here in Idaho, and it's listed on the Endangered Species Act as threatened. It's Spiranthes diluvialis, Utes ladies tresses, and you could find this thing along the Snake River, growing typically with Eleocris and some other wetland plant species, but it likes the floodplain of major river systems. This is a close-up photograph of it. It's in the orchid family, Orchidaceae, and they call it Spiranthes because these flowers are arranged in a spiral around the inflorescence. So that's one of the reasons why it's called Spiranthes. And it's got white to kind of light cream flowers. Grows with associated with Juncus. I can't remember all the species. There's a lot of different species that it's associated with. And I used to do the monitoring of this plant on the South Fork of the Snake River for the BLM, and I suspected for a long time that it was down there in the Fort Hall bottoms on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation. And when I was down there, lo and behold, I found it down there. So I was the one who discovered this plant on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, and actually the largest populations in Idaho are on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation. So it's a pretty neat plant. So, in conclusion, I just want to say Idaho rare plants, they're cool and they're worth protecting. And the state of Idaho and Idahoans, they should be proud that they have these really cool and interesting plants that grow out there in the wild. Wild plants are cool. And so, what could I say that Idaho cattlemen could do for rare plants? Well, first of all, you could not put or feed your animals where there's rare plant habitat. And so, to know where rare plant habitat is, you got to know your plants. And I remember one time I went down to Texas. I was hanging out with some Texans down there and Texan cattlemen. And what really surprised me was that they knew and took a great interest into all the different plants that grew out there in Texas. Even the cactus and the different kind of thorny shrubs that grow there. I was down there collecting plants and looking at the plants down there, and they're like, oh yeah, that's this one, that's that one, oh, I don't know that one. And so that's something that Idaho cattlemen could do to protect rare plants. Just get to know these plants, these different species, learn about them. And then, like I said, don't feed on top of their habitat. Don't put water improvements or range improvements across their habitat or in their habitat. And try and just keep your disturbance away from them best you can. And I think in the future, Idaho cattlemen and native plant societies, they're probably going to partner together, because as time goes on, you're going to see direct conversion, land conversion of wildlands, and the cattleman might be your ally in the future. If you're a botanist or native plant society person, you might need them as allies to help advocate for the continuation of wildland habitats. And so keep that in mind. You know, we all could work together better and cooperate better. And let's see, what else could I say? Oh yeah, treat weeds. Invasive weed species are a problem out there, and so we got to do a better job treating and controlling weeds. I'm always doing that myself. I could do better, but buy hay that doesn't have a lot of weeds in it. Whenever I go buy hay, I look at it and see what kind of weeds are in it, and I usually buy from the tribes. The tribes does a pretty good job with their hay. It doesn't have too many weeds in it. And then also for the land managers out there, like the BLM and the Forest Service, hire botanists, people who care and take interest in learning about these different plants. Hire them and hire them into a dedicated position for botany. Don't make it a side project. That's what I've seen a lot of. These federal land managers, you could do rare plant studies and you just a side project. But usually, like these rare plants, you got to have really special technical knowledge of all the different species out there, and you need to hire someone who's dedicated to that and specializes in that. For universities, start getting these students interested in rare plants and plant taxonomy. You know, it's more than just forage. There's a lot of different diversity out there. Just knowing what's there is half the battle. Let's see, federal managers, you could do more with establishing plant management plans for rare plants, and go out there and look at them. Take field trips with cattlemen and native plant societies, tribes, interested public in plants. Take trips out there, look at them, get to know them. They're in Indian way, they're our relatives, and so the non-Indians, you should think about like the different life forms out there. We're all related one way or another. And so take trips with stakeholders out, visit the area. Don't just do things in the office. That's easy to do. And for universities and researchers out there. We need to do better on teaching and doing research on rare plants and ecology, conservation. Teach those little ones. They're real interested in that stuff. You start them early, they're gonna be interested in their whole life. So do more outreach and public education to especially the little ones, K through 12. And we want to ultimately produce a future generation that knows about these species and is knowledgeable about the different plants, their uses, their importance. And a lot of these plants, they have medicines. They could unlock new medicines that we don't even know about. And they're also important for other things like wildlife, pollinators, soil conservation, cleaning water, cleaning the air, providing oxygen. So there's a lot of things that these plants are important for. And for your moms and dads out there, take your kids out, show them plants, enjoy those plants, and learn their benefits and uses. And so that's all I want to say. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.